Right. Welcome to the stream, everybody. Today, obviously, we were going to be talking about breaking up is hard to do. Let me know if you can hear me where you're watching from. So every day as a parent, we have to take in and process for not only ourselves, but our children, what the world is handing them out. What is the information that the world is giving them? What is the input that is going into our children, and how are they processing it, and what are they taking out of it? And every day we all do have to process that and then think, what are we teaching our children about what the world is giving them? So with Valentine's Day coming up, I have been thinking a lot about heartbreak and breaking up and relationships. And I am going to tell you guys the absolute wildest story. And it's not even a story as much as a saga. This thing has been going on forever. But before we get to that, so this month, a couple weeks ago, my son had his first breakup. And it really made me think a lot about how we treat each other and how we are teaching our children to treat each other. And so that's kind of where I'm headed with this today. The lessons that I have learned in my life, I'd love to hear the lessons that you have learned in your life, what you think about all these things and how they shape us. And really, at the end of the day, like when I think about our kids, when I think about my kids, and I think about what I want to teach them, it's like, what type of person do we hope our children will go out and be in the world? And I hope that I will be the type of person, and I hope that my children will be the type of person that goes out into the world, and that, like, I want people after they have interacted with me to be like, she was like a really nice person, right? There's definitely been times in my life where that has not been the case. Like, I told you guys last week, like I went full on rage, sent a bunch of texts to a church group about rage quitting, right? So, all of these things in our life happen, and what kind of person do they shape us into, right? So let's do it. Let's talk about it. So, craziest story you have ever heard. My very first boyfriend was in high school, like most of us, right? Okay. So, very first boyfriend is in high school, and I dated him for a good 3 years. Now, the context that you have to have is that I did grow up. Hello, everybody coming in. Get ready for this crazy story. Okay. I dated him for about 3 years. Now, context you need is that I grew up in the LDS faith, now known as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I just went and saw the Book of Mormon musical on Broadway. Otherwise known as Mormon. And when you turn 18 or 19 in the Mormon faith, you go out and you go on a mission. And there are lots of girls that are left behind that are dating these boys, and either they'll wait for them, or they will write them, and they will write them on their mission, and they will, support them and keep them going, or they'll end up getting Dear John, right? And Dear John is not a Mormon term, but it's a term of breaking up with somebody while they're away, right? Okay, so this was my high school boyfriend. We dated, I think I was a sophomore. He was a year older than me, so he was a junior. So we dated those 2 years. So maybe it was only 2 years. We dated those 2 years, and then he left on his Mormon mission, and he went to Chile. And we had a talk before he left on his mission, and I said, I don't think the best idea is that I wait for you. And that wasn't because I was trying to be cruel, or I definitely would say he was my first love, but I just was like, you should focus on your mission. And the best thing I can do for your eternal salvation is to support you on your mission. And honestly, I wanted to have a college experience. I wanted to go off, and I really did. I wanted to date other people. I would just be like that is what I wanted. And I still really cared about him. I did love him in the way that I could when I was a high schooler, right? But I knew I was young, and I knew I wanted to go have a college experience, go have fun, and date other people. So apparently the conversation that we had was, we were not hearing the same conversation. So that's what I heard. And he heard, the Saturday's Warrior, I will wait for you. If you're Mormon, you know what I'm talking about. So He went, and I did not wait, and he went on his mission. And there were a couple things that happened on his mission, but needless to say, I had to kind of Dear John him. So he ended up calling me. So this is just for like the people who grew up Mormon, but he ended up using his Mother's Day calling card to call me instead of his mom on Mother's Day. And then he just kept, he called a couple more times. And so I ended up having to be like, you need to focus on God. And this is not helping you. Okay. So fast forward 2 years later. So boys serve a 2-year mission. Fast forward 2 years later, and he comes home. You know, I'm living in Utah at the time, and I'm actually dating my now boyfriend. Or sorry, I'm dating my now husband. He was my boyfriend at the time, and we were not engaged yet. I did think it was going somewhere, and I knew that things had ended so weird between me and my high school boyfriend, or awkwardly because he was away, that I was like, I need to kind of finalize this. And truth be told, my now husband had broken it off with a girl. They were actually engaged. So they had an on again, off again, and they had broken it off. But I think there was still like some lingering, like, will we, won't we ever get back together? And so he was planning on ending it with his ex-girlfriend and kind of finalizing, wrapping everything up, right? Okay. So I begged my mom, do not let, I'll just use his name. I don't know who it's going to hurt. And it's anyway, do not let him pick me up at the airport. Do not, please, I'm begging you. When I fly home from Utah to Portland, please do not let him pick me up at the airport. And she promised me up and down, no, but he's there. He picks me up at the airport. It was so awkward. I was so uncomfortable. Like, it had been 2 years since we had seen each other. I knew I was dating somebody. I knew that he was expecting us to like at least have a conversation. We had talked about how we would see how things worked out when he got back. So it was just incredibly awkward. It was not, and then I was caught off guard. Heaven knows why. I knew my mother was going to go against anything I ever wanted. So, and then we end up going to church together. So we show up, we show up at church, and he is very much like he wants to pick up like from where we left off like 2 years ago, like no time had passed. Like, and I get it. He was on his Mormon mission, and he was not dating, not thinking about girls, I'm sure. And I wasn't, I had been at college for 2 years, and I had been dating, and I was like in the middle of a relationship with somebody right now. And so I'm like just all day long, like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? I have to tell him, and I have to really like officially break it off. So we spend the whole day together. We ended up making cookies, and then it gets to the end of the day, and I'm like, oh, okay, we have to have this conversation. So we're sitting down on this couch in my parents' family room, and I just said, hey, this relationship, I can tell you, like, I can't continue. Like, we can't pick up where we left off, right? I can't remember the exact words that I used. And he was like, I don't understand. Like, I don't understand. Like, this is what we said we would do. And I was like, I know that that's what we said. That was 2 years ago. We were different people. We were younger. And I was like, and I know you don't know this. I know you can't feel this right now, but I don't believe that we're right for each other. So then he asks me, did you kiss anybody while I was gone? And I'm just like, yeah. Like I didn't even consider how I answered this, how that was going to affect his feelings. And I just was like, yeah. And he flipped out. He got really upset. I feel like his reaction was like we were either married or engaged, and I just told him I cheated on him, which I guess from his perspective, was like justified. But for me, I was like, you were gone for 2 years and we literally broke up. Like we broke up, right? So anyway, so he leaves. And this is not even the craziest part of the story. This just gives you context, okay? So he leaves, he runs out the door, slams the door, and he is gone. And I have no idea where he is. No clue. And it's getting later and later and later. It's probably like midnight right now. And I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's ever coming back. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know if I'll ever see him again. So about midnight, he comes back, just comes back into the house. And he's like, why didn't you come find me? I was like, dude, I had no idea where you were. And he's like, I was at our special place. I did not know where that special place was. And I'm frustrated at this point. I am 19 years old. I am 19. He's 20. I guess he was 2 years older than me. And I'm 19 years old. I don't know where our special place is. I don't know what he's talking about. I can tell at this point that like, and I'm getting frustrated. I'm like, I didn't understand how he still had such strong feelings after being gone for 2 years, which is, in hindsight, like kind of flattering, but also just a little bit really awkward, really, really awkward. So I'll wrap this up and get to like the next part of the story. But basically the point of this part of the story is that I just was like, we're not right for each other and I don't want to be with you. And where do we get to a point in a relationship? Like, how do we spare somebody's feelings and also like make sure that the breakup is finalized, right? Because that's where I was at. I was like, you just need to accept that I am breaking up with you officially. For like, this is done. And if they just like will not let you break up with them, like, what are you supposed to do? But I do remember, even though I can't remember, every specific word that was said, this is 20 years ago at this point, I just remember that it was really, I feel like I remember it was really harsh and it ended up being a lot unfeeling, like a lot harsh, a lot unfeeling. And it was rough. It was rough. So this chapter ends and I am still at home for Christmas. This is like a couple days before Christmas and they have what's called dances. They have dances, young single adult dances. And he ends up going to a young single adult dance. And the story that I was told, I can't confirm this, but the story that I was told is that he proposed to the first girl that he danced with and they ended up getting married and they ended up having 3 children. And as far as I know, they're really, really happy. Okay. So this happens. I'm 19 years old. Fast forward 20 years later, and I have to give you a little bit of what's happened in between, but we meet up again in a sense. We don't technically meet up. It's wild. Okay. But 20 years later, and it makes me reconsider and like reflect on like how we broke up. So we'll get there. But just to so you kind of know where this like story is being woven into. Okay. So let me just take a minute. We got a couple comments. Thanks everybody for watching. What kind of cookies? They were chocolate chip cookies. They were chocolate cookies. You must live in the Fiats. Okay. I don't know where that is. You'll have to tell me. Okay. So I get a call from our ecclesiastical leader. This is still same time period. There's still like this 2-week Christmas break period. And I get a call from our ecclesiastical leader and he's like, listen, Nick has proposed to a girl he just met because he's heartbroken and you have to do something about it. And I'm like, I have to do something about it. How am I still responsible? How am I responsible at all for this person? But how am I still responsible for this relationship, right? Like he is a relatively grown man and he can make decisions whatever he wants. And he's like, no, you need to just tell him, that this is crazy. I'm like, fine. So I give him a call and I'm like, listen, like we had like a really special relationship. I loved you. I still love you. I just know that there's somebody else out there for you. And he's like, I know, I found her and I'm going to marry her. And I'm like, you could give it some time, like this, like I had time. I had 2 years to like consider like what our life would look like if we were supposed to be together. Like if you were the person that was right for me and I was the person right for you, like you might want to consider giving it a little bit of time. And, he blows me off, which like he was completely justified in doing that. Like who was I to say anything to him? And like, he should follow my advice. Like I still stand by the fact that like, maybe I should have called him, maybe I shouldn't, but it was totally up to him to do what he wanted to do. And how is me, like the person that just broke up with him, giving him relationship advice? Like, how is that ever a good idea? So I stand by, that was crazy. That was wild. Okay. So then I go back to Utah. My husband and I then end up getting engaged. My boyfriend at the time and I end up getting engaged. He is my now husband. I love him dearly. The love of my life. He's my favorite person in the world. I'm so glad that I married him. So we are getting married, and we go back to Portland because it's traditional to get married in the bride's hometown. And that's where I wanted to get married. So we go back to Portland and we get married, and we have a dress rehearsal dinner, and insert my mom again, who's like, you need to have it at Chili's. Now, my mom is crazy, but in her defense, Chili's was the closest venue, the closest restaurant to the venue where we were getting married. And yes, we were getting married in the Portland, Oregon temple, and Chili's was the closest restaurant to it. So we are going to have dinner at the restaurant where Nick, my boyfriend, is a server. And I'm like telling my mom, I was like, seriously, we can have dinner somewhere else. And she's like, I'm paying for it. This is the closest venue. This is where I want to have it. So I try and do the best that I can. My husband tries to do the best that he can. And we call the restaurant and we're like, listen, we had to make reservations. And we're like, please, please, please do not put Nick on the schedule. It'll just be awkward. It'll just be weird. And lo and behold, somehow, who knows, maybe my mom called and was like, put him back on the schedule. Who knows? But he gets on the schedule. And not only does he get on the schedule, but he is our server. This could not be more obnoxious, but he is our server. So my now husband went and talked to like the manager and was like, this is my wedding pre-rehearsal dinner, my wedding rehearsal dinner. And my fiance, my bride's ex-boyfriend is serving us. Can you please get somebody else? Anyway, it worked out. We did. I remember like, I can see him the whole time. He's like, so awkward. It's so awkward. So anyway, we ended up getting married. We live in Portland for a while. And everything's great. It's totally fine. So we don't see Nick again. We move on. We both move on. We both get married. We both start our lives with our new spouses, and we move on with life. Well, we end up going to church with, so we end up going to church and we end up making friends with this couple. And we're pretty good friends with them, and they invite us over for dinner. We both don't have children, so it's just the couples, right? So we're kind of on a double date. We end up going to eat at their house, and we see their wedding pictures. And lo and behold, their wedding pictures, Nick is this guy's best man. So he's like all over their house, like pictures of him all over their house. And we just kind of like, kept our mouths shut and didn't say anything. It's fine. You can have friends with people that I used to know. That doesn't mean I can't be friends with you. We just thought it was just a really funny story. And then we end up, I think my husband and him ended up having a class together at school or something. I can't remember entirely the context of it. But we ended up finding out, or this friend ended up finding out that Nick was my ex-boyfriend. And so he goes and like weirdly breaks up with my husband. Like, that's the best way that I can describe it. But he ends up saying, like, I can't be friends with you and be friends with Nick. Like, I can't do it. And it was just like, oh, okay. Like, weird, but okay. Okay. So I think I swear there's like something in the back of my head that there was like another story, but okay. Then we end up moving. And this is bound to happen, right? We both grew up in Oregon. We both grew up in Portland. We both live in Portland. And Portland is a very small, big city. Like, we both lived on the southeast side of Portland. So it's like, how weird is it that we're, going to run into each other? It's not weird at all that we're going to run into each other. Okay. So then we end up moving to Utah. My husband gets a job in Utah and we end up moving to Utah. And, my husband got this great job and I ended up getting a really great job too. And we were just living our lives, just normal living our lives. And my sister lived in Utah too, and she's a huge quilter. So she's part of like this huge quilting community. And it turns out that Nick was working at the maybe I shouldn't say it. I don't know that it matters. But anyway, he was working at this local quilting store where he went and fixed people's long arm sewing machines, like the ones where you like put your quilts in and you quilt it out. And he's like coming to my sister's house to fix her sewing machine. He's coming to like my sister's friends' houses and fixing their sewing machines. And like, I just can't get away from this guy. Like, I've now moved like 2 states away and I can't, it's just like so weird that he's just constantly in our lives. Like, it just seems like no matter what we do, he's like always popping up. So then we end up moving to Florida, right? We end up moving to Florida and then we end up moving to Missouri and I don't hear from him again. I never heard from him again. I don't want to like mess this up. I never heard from him again, but he kept being like in my circles, right? Like in my circles. Okay. So now we get to like the super weird, like incredibly awkward part of the story. So just absolutely wild. Like you can't like make this stuff up. So we start attending this church and in our neighborhood, all of these, you end up becoming friends with all the moms in your neighborhood and book club and play groups and homeschool groups. And I end up making friends with this really lovely girl and we have a lot in common. We have children of the same age. I ended up actually hosting a theater camp. It was a 4-month long weekly theater camp and all the kids would come over to my house and we were producing a play. We were learning about theater. It was so much fun. She was involved in it. Her kids were involved in it. And it was a ton of fun. Well, she ends up getting pregnant. Well, she gets pregnant. I don't know why it like ends up getting, she gets pregnant and she's having a baby shower. And I was invited to go to it by the other moms. And I was like, of course I will go. Her son has diabetes. My daughter has diabetes. Her husband has diabetes. I have diabetes. So we just had a lot in common. And I really adored her. I just thought she was just such a wonderful person. So I'm like, absolutely, I'm going to go to your baby shower. Like, I want to support you. I love you. We're friends. Well, then I got like an official invitation in the mail. And I was already planning on going. I already had I had already been invited informally. And I got this invitation in the mail and it was from this woman and I recognized the name and I'm like, oh, awesome. This is my friend from high school. I haven't talked to her in years. What does she have to do with her? Like, I didn't know what their relationship was. And there's something like is nagging me in the back of my head, because I just kind of read like the name on it. So I open it up and I look at the official invitation. And that is when it all comes full circle. And I realize that it is not my friend from high school. They have the same first name, but it is not my friend from high school. It is Nick's wife inviting me to my friend's baby shower. And I am like, how is this happening? How is this happening? So it turns out that my friend that I have gotten to know really well, her kids came to my theater camp. We go to church together. She is just my really good friend. We homeschool. That her husband and Nick's wife are brother and sister. So Nick is her brother-in-law. And his wife is throwing her a baby shower and I am guessing she doesn't know who I am when she writes out the invitation, because I cannot even imagine inviting somebody where things ended the way they ended. And we had like, he was my first love. I presume I was his first love. That's the age that we were at. And it ended badly. It ended very awkwardly. I know if badly is the right word, but it ended very awkwardly. And then there were a lot of awkward situations that came after that. And it made me think a lot. It made me think, really, really reflect on what would I have done? Like, I was invited to this baby shower. I had planned on going. And if I hadn't gotten that official invitation in the mail, I seriously would have driven to his house, shown up totally unbeknownst to me on his doorstep. And it just made me think a lot about who I was, the character that I was, and how I would have reacted in that situation. Like, would I have held over feelings from when I was 19 years old? Would he have held over feelings from when he was 20 years old? Like, are we still the same people that we are 20 years later? Do we revert back to those people? Like, these are all the things that are swimming around in my head. Do I go and support my friend anyway? Like, that was not really on the table, but I did think a lot about like how it would be. But I also wanted to think about his wife too. Like, how would I feel if somebody showed up at my door that dated my husband and they had a very serious relationship that ended? It's not like we fell out of love. It's not like we mutually came to this decision to end it. And not only that, but his wife was like, I don't know. I'm sure they're in love. But from my perspective, I'm like, I'm kind of the reason that you guys got together. So you can either thank me. I can either be like a catalyst for good or not. We just don't know people's lives. We don't know their whole story. And especially when you have this 20-year gap. So long story short, it just gave me a lot to reflect on. I reflected a lot on how I ended things, how my behavior was. And if I was kind, if I was a kind person that if I treated Nick the way that he deserved to be treated after being in a relationship in person for 2 years, and then 2 years of him doing something that I wanted him to do. I wanted him to go on a mission. At that age in my life, the way and where I was with religion at that time in my life, that was something that was incredibly important to me. And he did it because it was important to me. I hope that he had reasons of his own, but I do know that he went in part because it mattered to me. And then only to come home and be like, see ya, I've reflected a lot on that. So to wrap up this wild and crazy story, I did not go to the baby shower. I told my friend that I had something that I had to do that day, and I was really sorry. I took her a gift later. And then a big part of me just couldn't not know a little bit. And I just wanted to know a little bit about his life and how he turned out. Because again, this is somebody that I spent a majority of my life, not a majority. I've actually now been married to my husband longer than I was not married to him. So, and I am incredibly happy and love him. And I know he's watching. But I did spend a portion of my life, and my relationship with Nick led me to my husband. It taught me lessons about love and about a relationship and about being with somebody. And I don't take that for granted. We all owe a debt of gratitude. We all owe a portion of our lives to another person. And the way that we learn, we owe that to the person that helped us grow along our journey. And we'll have lots of those people in our lives in various different capacities of types of relationships. And he and I shared a relationship the same way that my husband's ex-girlfriend, the one that he ended up having to finalize things so that we could get married, like, she impacted his life too. And the decisions that he ended up making, as an adult and in our relationship, and deciding that we wanted to spend our lives together. So I did ask a few questions about his life. and it was so hard. It was so hard to not blurt out every time I saw her, because I saw her, like, we went out to lunches together. We had like this massive water balloon fight. The whole neighborhood had this massive water balloon fight. And I sat there and talked to her and her husband for forever. I actually got some really good advice from her husband. I was wanting to change insulin pumps, and I talked to him forever. And it was so hard. It was like this like cough that was like stuck in my throat. And I just wanted to blurt out, like, your wife's married to my ex-boyfriend. Like, I just like, I don't know what was like compelling me to like just want to like give up this information. I just think it's so wild that like we go throughout our lives and the same people or the same like circumstances, like I would love to hear from you guys. Do you have circumstances like that in your life where the same people that you think that you're moving away from, or you think that you're making your own decisions? Like, my decisions were not based off of Nick. I didn't move to Utah because he lived in Portland. It had nothing to do with it. Or I didn't move out of Utah because he lived there. Like, we just made decisions. I'm sure he made his own personal decisions about what was best for his life. I made my own personal decisions. They had no overlap whatsoever. And yet we kept finding each other in our lives. So turns out he lived just down the road. It was about 15 minutes away. And I actually moved into his city. So it wasn't, and I don't know how, who moved where is really irrelevant, but I ended up moving where he was. There was actually a day before I knew any of this happened. I was at Costco and I called my husband and I was like, I swear I just saw somebody that looked exactly like Nick. And now looking back, I'm like, it probably was. It probably was him. The chances of it being him are far greater than the chances of it not being. He ended up also having a daughter with diabetes. And so he lives in this town. We now don't live there. We moved out of there. It was in Texas. And he was going to my friend's house all the time because they were like really close. Like the sister and the brother were close, and the couples were close. Their kids were close. They were, similar in age. They had, similar interests. Siblings spend a lot of time together. So this is not awkward at all, just for me on the outside, because I'm like, how many times have I shown up at your house? How many times would I come to your house unknowingly? Like I just thought of how many times I could have awkwardly run into this person and how would I react? So basically the point of the second half of this conversation is like, how do we react? How do we end breakups? And how do we react when we come across a person in our lives that either we didn't treat as well, we reflect, and we didn't treat them as well as we now with time wished that we had? How do we end breakups? And most of all, right, because I'm always talking about parenting and family, how do we help our children navigate relationships? How do we help our children find the person that they are going to marry? Like, that is a critical part of our journey as parents. That is a critical part of our journey as just people in the world, people that are navigating this whole world. I've been doing so much thinking about, we actually went and saw Hadestown in New York City last week. And I was I'm going to really try and do this without crying, but I was so overcome with emotion watching this story play out. And, the Greeks had a way of trying to explain the world that they lived in. We all have been trying to explain over centuries of time. All we can do is try and explain the world that we're navigating, the existence that we have, and the world that we live in, and navigate it and try and make sense of suffering, make sense of love, make sense of the good and the bad. And so we went and watched this play, Hadestown, and I was just so absolutely overcome with emotion at how this story played out and how the Greeks made sense of suffering, of losing love, of doing everything you're supposed to doing all the things right and still ending up on the side of pain and suffering, because at the end of the day, like, life just happens and it doesn't even really matter what we do, because life will go on. Life will keep being thrown at us, difficulty and hardship. And I loved the last line of the play that said, we keep telling this story because the hope of love is greater than the suffering that we endure. And I have found myself just ruminating on this idea of pushing forward and trying, because the hope of love, the hope of something better, that feeling is stronger than the feeling of suffering. And of course, when we talk about love, when we talk about relationships, that can never be more true. So what do I tell my son, who was not the one breaking up? He was the one being broken up with. And how does he navigate moving forward? Like, does he just cut things off and say, okay, fine, we were really good friends, we dated, and now we're broken up. So what do we do now? Do we just never have a relationship again? Because that was her suggestion. That's what she wanted to do. And I get it. That it's hard. It's hard to maintain a friendship with somebody that you had feelings for at one point, and now your feelings have changed. And what I want to teach my children, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. What I want to teach my children is that our relationships carry us through life. We can't do any of this alone. That's why we form families. That's why we form couples and units and families, so that we can help support each other through life. And our friends play such a critical, important role in that. Of course, our spouses do. Our children do. We are here as parents to help our children navigate these situations. But we also have friends. We also have extended family. We have workplace. There's so much being said right now about Erica Kirk and her, secretly taped phone calls. And you can say what you want about them being manipulative, or you can say what you want about whatever you want to say about it. But I belonged to a workplace. I worked at a job for over 10 years. I worked at JetBlue when we were on this small team. And I understand that Turning Point USA was not a small team, but I was on a team. It was about 30 people. And I always called them my family, and they called me my family. When I was pregnant with twins, my very first babies, they gave me a baby shower. Not my parents, not my mom. No, my team, and all 30 of them showed up. My boss made sure that another team took over our work responsibilities for just the 2 hours while we had this baby shower. And it's okay to have your workplace be your family. It doesn't mean anything bad. Lots of places. My husband worked at Nordstrom. You spend more time often with your workmates than you do with your family at home. It's just the truth. At home, you're sleeping, you're eating, you're taking kids to and from practices. If you don't have kids, you still have other friends, and you spend 8 to 10 hours a day. If you include lunch, if you include whatever, you are spending the majority of your life with the people that you work with. And I would certainly hope that they would become close to you like your family. I would certainly hope that you would spend your day with people that you actually cared about. And if you're not doing that, then I would want to get out of there. Like, I'd want to work someplace where I did enjoy going to work every day. I don't think that's a fair assessment. I don't think it's fair at all. In fact, I think it's a little bit cruel to nitpick apart things. I think there's plenty to nitpick. I don't think it's fair to nitpick apart things that actually make sense and create fire where there isn't any. I have one of my best friends. We Marco Polo all the time. We don't live in the same state, but we Marco Polo all the time. And I don't know if I've ever sent her a Marco Polo where I'm not crying. And we've been through a lot, Our family has been through a lot. We have been through the death of a child. We have been through a child being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and having to be life-flighted because her body shut down, and we were in the stages of grief with our son that we didn't see the signs. We had a child born with open heart surgery, a child born with DTGA, congenital heart disease, and needed to have open heart surgery right after birth. We had family that was not there to help when any of our children were in the hospital. We had to navigate it all on our own and rely on beautiful friends who came in and lifted us up. And it's made me reflect a lot on the type of friend that I want to be and the type of person that I want to show my children that they can be. And I look at these people in our lives that literally just came in and said, I will do it. I will help you. I will be there for you when you need me. And that's the person that I want to be. I want to be the person that says, hey, I'm here and I will help you. I see that you are struggling. I see that you are suffering and I want to help you. So yes, I've cried a lot. It's a kind of full circle. I've cried a lot on my Marco Polos with my best friend who doesn't live in the state. And I know every time that she is going to intently listen to those Marco Polos, she's going to intently listen to every single word that I have to say, and she will respond every single time with love and understanding. And I know that I have somebody that I can talk to no matter what it is. I know that I have a friend that I don't have a mother that will come and help my children, but I know that I have a friend that will show up on my door if I have to go to the hospital for a month and be with my child who needs open heart surgery. I know that I have a friend that will do that. And that is absolutely precious and critical. And we all need that. We all need that in our lives. And so that goes more, of course, less about a heartbreak and relationship and like love, romantic relationships. And it lends much more towards just friendships and relationships in general. But I think that that's what we should be teaching our children, is that all relationships matter. Some of them, eventually only one of them is going to lead to something that will be lifelong, a romantic lifelong. And romance will be there. The love will always be there. That attraction will always be there. But your friendship and your relationship will develop too. And if that's not there, then none of the rest of that matters, right? But what does matter is how we treat people, how we care about them. And so navigating relationships with our teens and our young adults and beyond, right? Like our children may not be married. They preferably won't be married when they're teenagers. But they will go, they may have one or two or three boyfriends or girlfriends, or they may have dozens and dozens before they find the person that they're going to eventually spend their life with. And we are here all along the way, like trying to show them like what to do. And what do you do if you do have like an ugly breakup, right? Like, so this, like I said, this was my son's first breakup. They lived in different states. And so it was super easy. But it has made me think a lot about what kind of advice am I going to give him? How am I going to navigate like his feelings too, right? Because moms of boys, you're there with me, like they're not really forthwith with like all the things that they're feeling or what they want to say, and you kind of have to pull on it and help them get it out. So going back to my original story that is just so crazy, like I decided that at the end of the day, if I ran into Nick, that I would just want to be as normal as possible, right? I just decided that we both created a life for ourselves. We both made the decisions that we made, right? And even if at the time when we were young, he didn't agree with me, I presume now that he does, now that he has these beautiful children, luckily, thankfully, happily, and I wouldn't expect anything different. My friend, told me like, yeah, like we hang out with them all the time. Like they're great people. We love them. And I didn't expect, how awkward it would be to me. Like, hey friend, like, is your sister-in-law and her husband like really happy together? Like I didn't ask like that specific question. But they've built a beautiful life together. I've built a beautiful life. I'm just looking outside, we are going on this current adventure right now where we are living remote, and it's so fun. And I'm so happy. And I get to go see Hadestown in New York on Broadway with my husband and cry my eyes out because I'm just so overcome with feeling. And like, we just, all these things we're going to do. We're going to go on a lighthouse tour next week, or this week. And we're going to go to a soda bottling company factory tour. And I think I just said that totally wrong. And I want to take advantage of life. And I'm so happy that I get to do that. So I think that's just my point of this whole discussion about heartbreak is whether we're in a relationship or a friendship, whether we're ending a relationship or somebody is ending a relationship with us, we're navigating these waters with our kids. We're trying to teach our kids how to be good people. We're trying to teach them how to be good spouses, good boyfriends and girlfriends. We're trying to teach them how to just be good people, that at the end of the day, like, be a good person, follow the golden rule, like be the person and behave in the way that you would want somebody to behave and treat you. And it seems so simple, but man, when all those feelings get involved, and I don't have feelings, like, let me be clear, I do not have feelings for anybody other than my husband, but I do have feelings about the events that happened, right? I do have feelings like, why would I feel awkward? And I would feel awkward because I know that I was a little bit unkind. I also know it was 20 years ago, but I do know that it was a little bit unkind. And like when you look at your friends' kids and you're like, how did they grow up? Because in your mind, the experience that you had with somebody, it's like Severance, right? Who's watched Severance? It's like your world stops when that person goes out of your life. Like, they don't continue aging. They don't continue growing. That relationship ends when they go out of your life, and there's nothing else to fill in the gap. And so when you see them again, all this space in between for them, right? For your memories of them, it didn't happen. So you're just like brought right back to that moment with them, just like in the TV show Severance, and you've got nothing in between. And so that's just what I kept thinking is, that's my last memory with him. And it was awkward. And so am I going to be awkward again? Right? And of course I don't want to be. I want to be a normal, well-adjusted adult that can behave normally in situations. So I would love to hear more about what you guys think. How would you approach? Have you had exes in the past that you've run into that maybe was awkward, didn't end well? And how did you react in that situation? So wild and crazy. Like, it's just a part of me is like, I know I'm going to run into him again. I just know it's just been 20 years of running into him. And part of me and my husband and I had this conversation. It's like, should I just get it over with? Like, should I just be like, is there something? I also kept wondering that, like, in the play Hadestown, they had these fates that were like interfering a little bit, not a lot, but just a little bit here and there. And we all talk about that, right? As humans on the earth, we're always like, well, fate did this, or this is your comeuppance, or whatever words we use to explain why things happen. And so my husband and I are talking about this, and we're like, maybe you should just go. Maybe you should just go, because this keeps coming up over and over and over again. And maybe we are just supposed to meet and figure out why we keep coming into each other's lives. And mature or not, I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't need to do that. Maybe if we accidentally did running into each other in Costco, right? And like your carts bump and like, oh, hi, you. Oh, wow. How's your life now? I could do that. But like going to somebody's house that I know full well where I'm walking into and they don't, I feel like that is like so, like, that's like a gotcha moment, right? That is like I'm totally going to spring this on you. I've had time to prepare, but you haven't. I've had time to like reflect and be like, I'm going to be an adult here, but you haven't. So, and his poor wife that would have been like doing this bridal shower, I just feel like maybe she probably wouldn't have recognized me. The only way I doubt it, right? I don't know. I don't know. I've definitely talked to my husband about my ex-boyfriends. Most people probably do. I don't know if she would have recognized me. Obviously, it's been 20 years, but I also feel like, and that's what I was trying to get a feel for from my friend. Like, how often, like, is he going to be there? Was he there? And guess what? He was there. He was at the baby shower with their kids. It was like a whole family event. And that's what I was really thinking. Like, is he going to be there? You know, it would make sense for him to be there at the house. And then his wife, like, can you even imagine his wife's trying to throw this baby shower for her sister-in-law, and she's trying to like focus on the guests, and knowing this like weird, awkward, like history like happened, and it's now being like met up. I don't know. It's like, who's with me? This is so weird, right? It was like such a weird thing. So I want to know, would you have gone? What would you have done? Or are you on my side? Like, you're like, no, you don't go. You don't go do that. That's a bad thing to do. That's not a cool thing to do. So, all right. Thanks so much for watching today. So fun. It's just fun to talk about just the weird things that happen in our lives. So next week, I would love to talk about living in a Barbie world. And what does that mean? So this is something that I have thought a lot about, like everything else, right? But I'm raising daughters in a world that defines what beauty is. They don't get to define it. They don't get to define what makes them beautiful. The world's already done that for them. And I don't want them to listen to that definition. That's my personal take on it. I don't want them to listen to a world that tells them that there is a standard of beauty, and they can either match it or they can not be considered beautiful. Beauty has I want to teach my children that beauty has absolutely nothing to do with the way you look, that you should if you want to, you should do whatever, if you're interested in fashion, or you're interested in makeup, or you're interested in hair, or you're interested in whatever you're interested in, if that is what you want to do, go for it. But don't do it because a magazine cover told you to, a mega marketing company told you that this is what beauty is. Do it because that's what brings you happiness, but that's not what makes you beautiful. So that's what we're going to talk about. And it's going to be crazy interesting to me, but this is my podcast, and I'm not an expert in anything except my own opinion. So everybody take a bow and boot the grime of this world in the crotch, dear.